And in hemp, you are seeing, I absolutely believe it, new consumers coming in various ways, and they will drive new products and more differentiation among brands. There'll be more ways to succeed as we talk about different places this stuff could be available. So, the general operating principles I referenced are like, they may be gone. We don't know what they look like in this world. And that's what's so exciting for, I think, so many folks is this is the great unpacking.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of The Dime. I'm Bryan Fields, and with me, as always, is Colin Finney. And this week, we got a very special guest, Colin Keeler, Head of Business Development at Kiva. Colin, thanks for taking the time. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Doing great, guys. Thanksgiving week. Super excited to be here.
Excited to dive in with you. Colin, how are you doing?
Doing really well. Really excited to talk to Colin. Even more excited to have an individual who calls Colorado home, right? It's where he lives currently. So excited about that. And I'm excited to dive into Kiva and kind of everything that's going on within the cannabis and edibles game. I know we have a long list of topics to discuss today, but how are you doing, Bryan?
Yeah, I'm stoked. I've made no shame to the game that Kiva is one of my favorite products, and edibles are my choice of form. So I'm excited to kind of pick Colin's brain about products on the horizon, things to expect going forward. But as Colin kind of alluded to, we do have an East Coast, West Coast battle, but I think it's important to strip that all away and focus more specifically on where you were born. I think that's where the root becomes. So just easiest point, East Coast, West Coast, where were you born, Colin?
I was born outside Philadelphia on the East Coast. That's correct. That's
the record.
But live now in Denver and work for Kiva on the West Coast. So split affiliations.
That's fair. So for our listeners unfamiliar about you, can you give a little background about yourself and how you found your way to the cannabis space?
Yeah. So today, head up business development for Kiva. Came out of undergrad working through investment banking, really from a healthcare lens, and got into cannabis really originally from that level of interest, seeing the opportunity for helping on pain management, helping in mental health conditions. Took a sojourn into harder drugs briefly and worked at a psychedelic biotech that helped take public in 2021. And then came back, long friend to Kiva. So joined and have been loving helping them expand across the country and into hemp and sort of think about creative ways to work with different groups and grow the brand and grow cannabis.
Easier said than done. So I guess growing the brand, is it target list where before the year your team has like a list of states that you're eager to explore into? Or is it more based on the fact that the industry is as dynamic it is and it's like, hey, we heard Tennessee's getting hot, or we heard Australia's starting to grow. We should consider resource there. How big is it planned into it, or how much is it dynamic and innovative?
It's a bit of both for sure. Serendipity always plays a role. It's like it is business development, but I generally distill my job down into sort of the three S's. So it's sort of the strategy of where we want to go and making recommendations on that. The sourcing, so working through potential partners that we might work with. Kiva has expanded outside California. And maybe it's worth introducing sort of Kiva for those who may or may not know us, but we're the largest edibles brand in California. We're one of the largest, if not the largest in the country. House of brands. So Camino is our flagship gummy brand, and then a stable of other products spanning mints, chews, chocolates as our heritage. So, preeminent edibles company. We also are the largest full service distributor in California. So that's us. But yeah, we've expanded to all these other states working through partnerships, licensing, co-manufacturing, different business models to match what states offer. So sourcing those partners and then structuring the deals that we do to go and mutually sort of pursue our goals. And we've had to adjust those goals over time. I think sort of emerged originally as, oh, this is nice. We can license the brand and touch other states. It was hard back then. But now the roster of partners has expanded. People are thinking about their businesses in different ways, and it creates really unique opportunities to try and be bespoke to what will drive success in each market, which is very different from cannabis market to cannabis market. So, we've done this as effectively as anyone else out there in our own sort of opinion, but it's an evolving thing. We're introducing new innovations and thinking of new ways to try and goal see for what we care about, which is being the leading edible brand and doing so in a way that actually makes us money, which, in cannabis can be challenging. So, I think we're doing a great job of it.
And so with a strategy perspective from a business development, it's had to be a very exciting, maybe 5 years with Kiva. I know 2021, you just got back, but kind of talk us through some of those changes in terms of before, I guess, the hemp market became what it is today. Like, did you guys traditionally target like states that were medical only, looking that they may become adult use, or was it waiting for a state to become adult use? Kind of talk us through like that strategy, like pre the hemp world, and then we kind of dive into the hemp stuff if you want.
Yeah. I mean, the way we think about it is size does matter, and that sort of affects what you can do. So moving early against sizable markets is a winning strategy in our opinion. Now, if it can be in medical, that's supportable. Like that's worked out really well for us. Like Ohio has been a phenomenal story in that regard. We're the number one edible brand there. We entered with momentum into adult use. In other markets, you may be with adult use, right? Like New York, we were an early mover in the adult use market, and that has paid dividends. We're now number one there as well also. So there's no one single recipe, but generally speaking, especially in edibles, people trust edibles. Once you find an edible you like, there's a bit of durability to that edible, right? Because it's delivering an effect usually. You're usually goal seeking for something consistent that will deliver what you're going for. So being early into some of these markets is super important because consumers build loyalty. They do say, I like this edible. Maybe I'll try out some other ones, but like for me, this is my go-to for sleep, for energy, for partying, whatever it might be. So early with an aligned partner who can really help us on the jobs to be done. So the jobs to be done are producing to unconstrained demand. Do you have the financial resources to do that? Are you able to run a facility to do that? And then selling and marketing to unconstrained demand. And we can either do that in licensing with a partner who has a great wholesale portfolio that we fit into, or Kiva can do it ourselves. And we do that for ourselves in New York, for example, where we have our own team and we're building those relationships directly. And it's not one size fits all, but just making sure that we are aligned, that the goal is to be in that number one slot, make that pie as big as possible. And there's dividends to both sides in any well-structured relationship. Because this isn't an acquisition. You can't take advantage of somebody, right? You got to do a deal that works and can evolve and be resilient against changing environments. So it's a lot of fun in that regard.
It's one thing to target being the number one, but it's another thing to actually have that kind of happen, right? Because when the consumers for the first time go into a dispensary and they're looking for an edible and they ask the bud tender for a suggestion, is that where Kiva really lays into it? Or do they start earlier in a priming aspect, trying to understand like which aspects they got to target from a consumer standpoint, marketing to them in order to be there when the time is ready to purchase? Because both them can play massively different challenges, resources necessary in order to be successful.
It gets like an interesting concept I have, and like this answer isn't the same for every company, right? And so for Kiva, what's driven our success has been, we're a product-led company. Like our founders, Scott and Christy, they care about the products. They love the innovation. And like that has then led to brands that really resonate with folks because we have led innovation across like so many dimensions in edibles. We were the chocolate bar, what came out at a time when people were just still doing Rice Krispie treats, in California, right? In plastic wrap. Terabytes was one of the first like portable products. Camino, one of the first effects-driven gummies, and an early mover, if not the early mover, on like utilizing CBN and minors, to drive those kind of effects. So chews, right? Nobody else is really, very few are doing chews at a scale. Chews being like our Starburst style format candy. The way we have, and that is now going to be rolling out across a number of geographies shortly with the success in California. So that for us has been sort of the core value. And then it's the ground game. Of course, it's educating bud tenders who are the gateway still today. But then also, where can you access consumers outside of just winning the hearts and minds of bud tenders? So we we lead on brand and we lead on product. Other companies, they might lead on sales or freebies or other sort of strategies, and that's necessarily wrong. That can be very right for them, but for us, we think this is what's durable and will continue to drive the success we've seen in the markets as they exist today, and then also the success we're seeing in new things like hemp and elsewhere. So, yeah.
You guys always try to tend to lead with like maybe 2 or 3 flagship products into the new markets, and like, is it gummies, maybe chocolates, or like is it specific flavors? Like what is, or does it change by state?
That's a really great question, Colin. So we do look at each state and then really try to match to what's needed. It almost always is gummies to start, because in any given edible market, look, an edible market is on average 10 to 20% of total spend, right? In cannabis, there's maybe different rules coming for other stuff, but 10 to 20%. And then gummies are 60 to 80% of that today. So we made the decision when gummies started taking share, we looked really hard and said, are we a chocolate company or are we sort of an edible company? And that's when we went hard after gummies and have seen the success with Camino and Lost Farm, because it is an important category. So we almost always lead with gummies, but then it's like, how are you doing this? What dimensions of innovation matter? And what we're seeing increasingly, minors and effects matter. Well, great. Camino's already there. Camino leads on effects, and that is a product that is base proposition is very understandable effects for consumers. Lost Farm sits for the connoisseur in a way where they already know the strains they like. So then they can refract that back into an edible that's delivering the same effect that they know in that way and know and love. So driving towards better, more specific effects, especially minor led. I'm extremely bullish on minors. I love CBG. I love THCV. Is sort of one major, really important thing, and we're increasingly bringing that into sort of launch portfolios. And then second, dosage. What is the dosage paradigm for the state? A medical state looks very different than adult use. Is it 100 milligram cap? Are there sort of preparation loopholes? We have the Lost Farm One piece, which has been sort of a rousing success in the markets we've launched to date, which is really addressing that dosage focused consumer who doesn't want to eat 20 gummies to get their sort of appropriate dosage. So it's those are the things that tend to matter, but we're always trying to talk to partners who've been in the market, who know the markets, to really suit that portfolio. Am I bringing in pineapple habanero or am I bringing in yuzu lemon? These are the important decisions that you make based on geographies. And so it's
the
pineapple
peach,
for
right?
sure. The pineapple for sure.
Peach though, right? For Georgia? I heard that was kind of a...
You got it. You got it. Build it around exactly what matters to people. Someone making sure you're doing it right. Like, so if someone came and said, hey, let's do an apple for New York, I'm like, come on. Nobody in New York calls it the Big Apple. Like, this is
no.
I think the important aspect though is like we're seeing the early signs of like brand traveling, because I would assume when these bud tenders, they're making a recommendation to someone, they're like, hey, I haven't tried these 2 other ones, but I've had Kiva a bunch of times and they're a really easy one for me to recommend because I've had it. And I wonder if we're starting to see those early trends. And I'm wondering if you see that also, which is why being early is so important with a brand like yours who's traveled and has expanded so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, the Northeast remains a priority in that regard, just because of the momentum I mentioned, right? So New York, we've now moved into number 1. With Massachusetts, we've been number 1 for a long period of time. We just launched Connecticut maybe 2 weeks ago, and I don't know where we rank, but we are doing well above our expectations, like phenomenally. New Jersey's off to a great start. Who's next? Not to say I don't want to work down the seaboard, but, if being a Philly area guy, do I want Pennsylvania in the mix? Like, yeah, I absolutely, at some point I do. And then Maryland, we'd love to be there as well, too. I mean, we want to be everywhere, but building on that momentum when consumers do know and trust is very much part of our playbook.
All right, so let's get into the hemp thing, because it is got to be really challenging. That is the cannabis side. But from a hemp standpoint, how do you balance not competing with yourselves in these markets, but also gaining the market share as it continues to grow wide? And the consumer base kind of dabbles between, I guess, both sides of the industries. Is that a fair way to describe it?
It was a really interesting thing. So let's take a step back. So when my wife's from Minnesota. So I was actually up in Minnesota 2 years ago when they accidentally legalized hemp there. right? And that's when it really entered my radar. I'd been aware of Delta 8. I'd seen it, certainly stores, but there was very much that's not sort of real cannabis, right? And seeing this legalization, coming back that Christmas and having my mother-in-law say, Colin, I think they're selling marijuana at the boutique. And I'm like, all right, get in the car. We got to go check this out. And seeing these edibles that were very much the same kind of products you'd get in any other space, I said, we can't be behind this. But then there was a year of, how do we do this right? How do we do this in a way that will deliver on the brand value and proposition we've established in cannabis in a consistent way? How do we balance against, existing partners and dispensaries and manufacturing partners, et cetera? So, it's been like a thoughtful building process from our strategy. We're in 15, 16, going on 16 states, in traditional cannabis markets. That's adding in hemp markets through D2C or the wholesale relationships we have, that goes to 40, right? We're covering 80% of the population in the US today, potential customers, right? But how do you balance that? Well, some states we overlap, some we don't. We have to be very, very judicious in which states we do go to. We're not doing anything that, if it's not bright line that we can be in that state, then we're not doing it from a hemp perspective. We just want to be absolutely on the, as fully in the right as possible. And then if there is an overlap, what's been truly fascinating is we absolutely believe it's driving lift in our traditional cannabis business, because I'm selling the same or a lower dosed product for like twice as much. Like Oklahoma, for example, with the introduction of 100 milligram ad spend, well, it's just building. How many times do you need to touch a consumer before they actually buy? And now I can do that by being in channels that I've never been in before. You can't do it directly, but if they're seeing Camino, right? And then they go to a dispensary, and instead of spending $35 online D2C for 100 milligrams, they have the opportunity to buy that for a fraction of that, or 1,000 milligrams if that's their sort of chosen price point. Well, we've seen a meaningful improvement in our Oklahoma business, for an example. So there are increasing strategies you can use where it elevates the whole funnel, because how are they introduced to the brand? How do they trial the brand? Oh, wait, there's a price variance that's really, really attractive here. So I'm not saying this is today, and I'm not saying it's true everywhere, but this is such a huge opportunity to bring folks into cannabis, into our brands, and that's validated too by the mix. So if I go to a new state, like I said before, there's the general rules. Sleep is going to be my top seller. It'll be 40% of sort of the given mix, right? Our sleep SKUs. This is not the case in hemp. Hemp is on D2C, is this wholesale, and you're seeing completely different 1, 2, 3s, including our low dose product, which is ranked as high as 3rd in our D2C channel. That doesn't happen in cannabis markets. It's a nice performer, but it's 5th out of the top 5, right? That's just the sure thing. And in hemp, you are seeing, I absolutely believe it, new consumers coming in various ways, and they will drive new products and more differentiation among brands. There'll be more ways to succeed as we talk about different places this stuff could be available. So the general operating principles I referenced are they may be gone. We don't know what they look like in this world. And that's what's so exciting for, I think, so many folks is we can, this is the great unpacking. The soccer moms are coming in a big way, and can you position your business in a way to try and take advantage of it, but also not being taken advantage of? Does that make sense?
Does it also have the same impact on international markets as well?
To the extent that they are getting on board.
From a legality perspective, right? Can you do D2C in Australia?
Hemp is
it right? What's that like?
There is a
it's not easy, is it?
there is a hemp is like a singularly American and sort of or the hemp
bill, right? Yeah.
Is almost a singularly American invention. Now, there definitely are markets that are latching on in a way and may create opportunities for export, but
there's not a ripple effect from the farm bill that impacted like national narcotics acts or anything like that, where like the loophole that we're describing with hemp allows the THC at certain levels to be distributed below that threshold legally, but that's not something that has impacts on like our national or international narcotics laws, is what you're pretty much kind of saying, right?
Yeah, I'd say depends who you ask. And there's
I'm not a lawyer either, right?
Depends who you ask. And we definitely want to be ahead of that, but I think over time that will absolutely like crystallize more. But again, everybody thinks about these things so differently. Like Europe right now is just so flower focused, and that edibles aren't even on their radar, right? Like, is hemp going to be penetrating? Well, we've seen some things in Eastern Europe with actually some of the synthetics like HHC and otherwise, where they've actually been pro it. So certainly there's a chance that this could be the operating paradigm for some, nation states to latch onto. But I can barely predict, state and federal level changes in regulatory environments. So trying to predict, how international will go, and just try and remain responsive to the changes. So we're looking internationally under more traditional cannabis, architectures.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Internally, does your team take the state, let's say New York, for example, and break it up like legal or traditional cannabis and then hemp, and then have that as a defined market size? And do you compare them against each other just to see if sometimes maybe your hemp business is cannibalizing the other portion of your business?
Again, we've been judicious in overlap. And again, together, we've seen in those that do overlap, we've seen like a meaningful accelerant. And we're trying to work directly with partners to also, hey, can we support your dispensary? Can we do things to bring these consumers in? What's interesting is like, it hasn't been that many hard decisions because most states are choosing. They're choosing, hey, I want to do it under hemp, or I want to do it under a cannabis paradigm. So it's like making life a little bit easier in that regard, that you see some states doing it through a really dispensary driven sort of distribution paradigm, and others that are doing it through more of a health bev smoke shop paradigm. And I'm open to both. My long-term hope, I hope there's some kind of high-low approach that proliferates across a number of states. Seen that in alcohol. But if you look at alcohol as a corollary, every state does things very differently. I grew up in New Jersey, whereas there's liquor stores you go to, and then across the way in Pennsylvania, you had beer distributors for beer, and then the state selling the wine and spirits, right? And then you go to Minnesota, where they had the low-dose beers for years, right? Well, now they've come up with the low-dose paradigm. Is that probably what's going to happen? It's just every state's going to be pretty different? Maybe. Yeah. Like, I think that's reasonable to expect. Everyone hopes that there's going to be like this grand awakening. There's going to be exactly the same across the country. Nothing in the US is like that. That's the nature of our, collection of states as a country. We just do things a variety of different ways in this grand experiment, and it sort of remains resilient and succeeds. And I think that's what will happen in cannabis, hemp, THC.
Yeah, I think the one issue, like the one thing that helps the alcohol industry like regulate how states can like control it is like, I can't go mail Bryan or you, right? Even in Denver, right? Like, I couldn't take a bottle of wine and ship it to you. That's illegal, right? Like, I need a license, which is sort of the distributor thing, which I wonder if there's going to be some sort of like maybe that's the answer for making the hemp industry and the cannabis industry like work nicely together and reduce the friction that everyone is describing as some sort of like distribution limit on the hemp industry, right? Because essentially, like, you could make all of the products in one state, ship them to every single state, and undermine like all these other cannabis entities that are producing it in that state and are handcuffed by not being able to move it out of that state, right? So do you think that like some sort of like law is going to need to be enacted to create an environment where they can both operate independently? Or do you think that there's actually going to be like a full like merge of the two industries where like essentially if it's THCA or THC, it's THC. It doesn't matter if it comes from hemp or cannabis? Or do you think they'll always be like just like these two parallel industries walking side by side with different rules? And there's no right answer, right?
If I had the answer,
We cut the recording. We go right to the Vegas.
Oh, did this go out? Did it? No. I like to believe that the logical prevails over time, but my general experience with cannabis is exactly the opposite. So, I mean, whether it remains sort of definitionally split in some ways, or my hope is that there is more of a merging over time to look at this from a very logical, science-driven perspective. And there certainly should be supporting rules to enable whatever regulatory framework states want to stand up, I think is the right approach, right? If they want to do something, they should have the agency to do that. And that has seemed to work so far within hemp, right? You look to the Northeast and the rules they've set out, whether BEV only or completely banning hemp products or CBD ratios. If there's accompanying enforcement from a state side, that actually has seemed to work to allow them, to make those rules go into effect. Like I'm in Colorado, we had a lot of the beverages at my local liquor store. They changed the rules, and now there are low dose versions of those beverages in the liquor store. Like that, people are following the rules generally. Now, are there like shady online sellers that are shipping against these laws, like big, bundles of THCA? Without a doubt. But you can do that with anything. I mean, there's online sellers of mushrooms that are shipping, like mushrooms that are shipping across the country, right? Like, yes, those things exist, but we can't blame the state architectures there. And so just enforcement matters in those kind of things,
So let's talk economies of scale. With the hemp industry, you're able to ship across all the states, but the price, I'm assuming, has to be close to what I can get in a dispensary in order to try to keep the customer there. Is that the current stance?
The pricing architecture question is going to be the hardest thing for cannabis companies, one of the hardest things for any crossover cannabis company to get used to. Right now, in state by state, they're individually very, very disparate pricing, right? Like I have some states where a tin of Camino is like close to $40 with all the taxes and the cost of actives and everything else. And then there's other states where you can get it for close to 10, right? That's really hard to manage. And hemp does almost simplify that to an extent. We're starting high because we think that's important. And then we're not going to be competitive against, if there's an overlap with a state cannabis market where we do overlap, we're not going to be competitive on that front. We think that we're supporting the partners and the dispensary as the preeminent choice. Because again, those introductory consumers want, if you're looking for a D2C, maybe there is a premium associated with getting that product direct to your door. Now, we want to be competitive over time, and I think these things will normalize. Every cannabis market that matures sort of starting to head towards the same place. So we never build the business model around the excess profit period of any given state, right? And that's a mistake a lot make. Oh, we can sell for $20,000 a pound, or whatever else, like a kilo. Like it's if you live in that kind of world and think that's going to be perpetual, whether by lack of competition due to regulatory or otherwise, then you're not building something super durable. You have to imagine competition. You have to want that competition, right? And look at that as an opportunity. I want competition. I want all my competing brands in the states that I go to. So I want to beat them.
So does that mean? Sorry, I don't interrupt.
This is not Jake Paul. I don't want to fight.
So does that mean the hemp platform that your team has is geolocated from the pricing standpoint, or is it consistent across?
We try to be consistent across the geographies we're in with hemp.
So it doesn't matter if I log in with the VPN and put myself in California and then go onto that platform, I'm still getting the same price every time?
It is the consistent pricing on D2C, yeah. And then wholesale, we go out with a consistent list price as well. And then the prices that reaches consumers in a given state in the hemp side. So we're live in wholesale in Tennessee and Minnesota, with a few more to come this next couple months. If you're distributors out there, please give me a call. Love to chat. But
nice plug.
Exactly. The margins they take may vary. State by state, different standards are being set by the channels that these tend to move through. Smoke shop tends to take higher margins, similar to dispensaries. Liquor and others tend to be lower, right? So like you do see variant MSRPs, but we try and guide retailers and work with the ones that want to be consistent with our brand values, right? And where we want to be from that perspective. But it's hard.
What have you guys learned from cannabis that you think has benefited you the most with your foray into hemp? Like, is there certain things that you gain from operating in the cannabis industry that have just been a game changer in terms of how you've been able to deploy your guys' hemp product lines?
Yeah, yeah. Kiva has this sort of mixed heritage, right? We have a lot of folks who come from sort of OG cannabis or historical, seen these markets develop. We also have this great mix of folks who really know sort of the CPG side, Red Bull, Pepsi, like all these sort of great, sort of marquee backgrounds. That together has really positioned us well for excelling across sort of go-to-markets, across categories, because we can bring the best education, incentives, et cetera, from cannabis world, but also know that the rules of that in sort of the channels available in hemp are radically different. We've never done what's called a PDQ before, right? So PDQ is pretty darn quick. It's those boxes that you see in retail where you rip the top and.
So you guys don't have your hands tied behind your back now.
Yeah. So, no.
You're like, I have acronyms for what I can do.
Yeah. I had to learn a whole new set of acronyms. It's really challenging, but it's fun because we recognize that from CPG world and can bring in the best of those. So people look at us and they say, authenticity of like a cannabis brand, proven strength, but they also know the ways we work from the liquor distributors we're working with or the end retailers to deliver the kind of different needs, right? Some states right now, they need to be at the counter in hemp. Other states, you can put it on the shelf. What that's very different in how you're actually merchandising it and the kind of support that retailers need to make a success, because there's inherent education. But that's probably the biggest, to directly answer your question, bringing over education and knowing how to educate, right? That's a key pillar of any sales motion in cannabis. We're doing that at a level that you don't see with a random beer brand, right? Like we're coming in, we have to teach these, beer distributors that have, like, not even zeros, right? Like we have to teach them from the very lowest levels all the way up. And it gets them really excited because it's so novel to them. But if you don't have that heritage of like educating bud tenders and educating consumers, it's a lot harder. They're just like, what is this? This makes no sense. Is it the same as the marijuanas or is it not?
How much does Kiva prioritize internal innovation with the understanding that consumers are effects driven, specifically with the edibles?
It's so much of what we think about, right? Where is the consumer? What do they want? We're willing to try things and then let it go if it doesn't work. But, the history of innovation has been super important. And I think in ways, to me, they were a little bit surprising, right? So like I mentioned those major areas that are sort of where focus is right now. There's a lot that people do on form factor as well too. And we think about that. We have some interesting things in the work on maybe new product formats that could be successful. I mean, Chews again was like, in terms of a new product format, was really, really just a home run that we proved in California and then now bring out. And that's the model. We do it ourselves in California. We own the results and we go to partners and we say, look at how exciting this is, right? And it'll be a success here because of not only what we've done there, but we know about your market with everything we're doing today. Well, that's super attractive because bringing a portfolio, and this contrasts with some competitors, bringing a portfolio means you can serve more needs for your dispensary customer, like Brett's, right? Like we can help you. We can grow your basket. We can be that great one partner to you. And you can trust us because we've brought this before and it's driven success in your four walls, right? And at the end of the day, that's what matters. Now, there's a lot of stuff you can do from an innovation perspective that sounds cool, but it's just sort of a gimmick. And we do that too. We have LTOs, we have stunts that we do. There's a catch up a couple of years ago that, or the gravy we've done that's like really exciting, fun things for a period of time. But then what's like a durable innovation? The durable innovation, I think, is going to continue to drive against consumer needs. And whether that's with minors, whether that's with dosage, whether that's with, I don't know, what the unicorn tiers that someone invents next, we have to be on the horizon looking for those things or you get left behind. And there's false flags too. Like I really thought I thought speed and onset was going to be, and we spent a decent amount of time on it, on really trying to find something that actually delivered a quicker onset. Cause like a lot of people say quick, but then you actually do the blood work and you do the consumer studies and it's not any quicker. And we ended up not doing something there because we couldn't do something that we actually thought was
real
and also didn't it didn't taste terrible, right? Like we actually had them hit incredibly quick, but it's super bitter. So we never actually used this technology because it's like we're just not that good tasting. But like definitely delivering on quick, the quickest edible we've ever had. So it's constantly exploring and testing those things to make sure it's what consumers actually, want and actually delivers on the promises to them. They're not dumb. They'll wake up,
What area is your team investing in, let's say, that is not the quick version, but something you're extremely bullish in that you think is the next kind of foray into expansion for consumer preferences?
The dosage side, we continue to be really thoughtful on.
Like the low dosage?
Low dosage, high dosage, intermediate dosage, like building for those consumers in the ways that they want. These are correlated choices. So whether it's the Lost Farm one piece, we also have something that's a bit more value oriented in the works that delivers a strong dosage in a pretty novel format that can't quite tell you about.
Just three of us.
Yeah, come on.
And then high dosage, especially for medical, where that makes a ton of sense, is really sort of an important area for us, right? There's an interesting anecdote from Coca-Cola, right? Where most major changes for Coca-Cola, they resisted at some point in time, right? They didn't want to do the fun size big ones. They didn't want to move off the bottles. They didn't want to, these consistent choices. And it turns out once you build that brand value, it's pretty durable to bring related, tailored products for consumers who have, different needs. So that's the hope there. And then, like I said it already, but the more we can do with minors, the better. And there's so much value. I'm so excited for the research that's going on in those kind of compounds. And I think they really do live up to the effects. Like our Recover SKU, CBG, is my favorite. And I had no pre-existing sort of affinity for CBG, but it is just a phenomenal product. So if we can find more like that, at least I'll be happy.
Is Kiva kind of leaning more into like maybe like the sport side of things where like you're enhancing performance, or like I know you just mentioned recovery? Is it more trying to like lean into like the application of minors for like recovery, healing, like wellness?
I think the reason you see gummies as such a dominant format is because it does fit very neatly into supplementation and wellness, right?
Yeah.
And like that is actually what many people are using. Like I said, sleep is so strong because it's the one effect that is sort of provable for people. And also, like, if you got good sleep.
Yeah, right. Like, if you slept or not.
Yeah, exactly. So that effect is like, and CBN products help. They do help. The research is already starting to come together there. The more you can do things like that. THCV delivers on focus, delivers on energy, right? So whatever we're bringing forward, it has to actually live up to what we're putting in. And it definitely fits into that wellness. I think that is an important thing, as well as everything traditionally you might think for. Our Excite, it's a great party, great time. So, yeah.
Those aspects from the effect driven, I think, are the game changers for me, the creative ones, the focus ones, because I think like people consist of like, they think, okay, take an edible to get high, relax, short, sleep. I totally understand. But the other elements is the ones that I enjoy most. The creativity one, the ones when you're having like a difficult challenge, you're unable to solve it. You pop one of those later on, you're like, God, there she is. Like, there's the answer to the problem. And I think those are the areas that I'm most bullish on going forward, where I think people are going to start seeing opportunities to expand their current product use and recognize that this is an area that the edibles can deliver on that they didn't previously consider.
I agree.
Any minors that you can share that your team is going to be releasing in the future?
There's one thing I don't lean too much in is getting in the way of product and brand. That's not me, and I won't. They'll have my head if I jump the gun on anything.
What about different form factors like beverages?
I remain very interested and focused on beverage. We continue to contemplate. I mean, it's an exciting time.
Sounds like a good business,
and you have a brand to like accelerate behind it.
Yeah,
Come on, Christy.
I'm super excited. I think I'm friends with so many of the brands. KSS carries the bulk of the top brands in California in terms of beverages. I wrote an article in like 2019 or 2020 about how cannabis beverages was sort of a frontier expander for cannabis consumption. And I think it's right now the major proof point that the changing distribution models that we're seeing in hemp can beget success in product formats, types of products that maybe historically haven't thrived as well as they should have in a single type of end sale point. If that makes sense. So, beverage remains interesting for us. No immediate plans there, but certainly something that we're very much keeping a pulse on, and want to be. We're working with the same distributors in a lot of these states as many of the beverage brands. So,
but not a no.
Yeah.
Not my realm, guys. Not right.
Come on, Christy.
Yeah.
Right. Slightly switching gears. Dream smoking session, 3 people dead or alive.
Gosh, I listen to this podcast all the time, hear this question, and always have great ideas then. I think let's change it up. Let's go a little weird. Avicii, I think, would be a pretty good one, just because I was listening to Levels thinking about his passing recently. I think Obama remains a one that on everyone's list. And then probably Bill Clinton too. Why don't we just keep it presidential? So that'd be a great.
I like it.
I love it. Tell me something that's true that nobody agrees with you on.
I think a lot of people at Kiva just make fun of me for my love of the CBG skew. Is really it's not that nobody agrees, but I think I'm the biggest fan by far of my close coworkers. So that maybe that. I don't know.
What question do you wish more people asked you?
Where can I get Kiva?
Oh, that's a good plug.
I can't even ask where, because it's everywhere. Are there any underrated elements that you think your team is not getting enough attention for?
Look, I think I'm just proud of the team, everything that people have done internally at Kiva. People work extremely hard and take things extremely seriously in elevating this brand. Like everyone internally holds our own brands in like the highest esteem. And I've worked at companies where that isn't the case, where people don't have that kind of passion for it. So, it's not easy. This kind of expansion and growth that we're seeing is just chaotic and fun, and it's an unbelievable energy, but it's challenging at times. And I just every day thankful for such great coworkers who help push this brand to new heights.
All right, prediction time. Colin, 1 year from now, what does the edible market look like?
I think edibles will never be as low a share of spend as they are today, through the proliferation of more points of sale, through the innovation of products. It's consistently, again, you see 10 to 20%. If that's that higher than 20% in a year or a few years, then I'd be dramatically surprised, because I think the potential of edibles is just starting.
Colin?
I agree. I think that there will just be like a slow, steady increase in edible consumption. I don't think it's going to be like next year, 80% of the United States population has now just converted over to edibles. But I do think that like you'll see a steady 5 to 10% increase year over year, probably for the next 5 to 10 years is my guess, right? So, I mean, everyone feels comfortable eating something that will cause like a psychological change, right? Like pharmaceuticals, all of those things. So I don't see that changing. So I think it'll be easy for mass adoption. What do you think, Bryan?
I think a year ago, most probably wouldn't have expected the beverage market to absolutely explode. And I think given that, we can anticipate that the edible market can likely do the same. If the Farm Bill continues on its current path, or they pump that situation, and the next step is that most Americans recognize that they can take cannabinoids like a comparable form like beverages, where they can feel a euphoric feeling. Maybe that's not so psychoactive, maybe one they can take for relaxing. I think that could be a real game changer for so many. And I wouldn't put it past edibles to be the next frontier that just absolutely double hockey sticks up, because we just don't know how the industry evolves. And I think this is the type of consistency that would change people's perspectives. And if they get that first foray with beverages, edibles could likely be this next one in. So Colin, for our listeners, they want to get in touch, they want to learn more, where can they find you?
Colin.Keeler@kivaconfections.com, or, please add me on LinkedIn. I love the banter and chatter on there.
I love it. We'll link it all in the show notes. Thanks for taking the time. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks, guys.